great to have you here.
I had decided I wanted to get into events.
Don't rush into anything.
Left university and pretty much went straight into it.
It's just got to happen. So do what you need to make it happen.
I've never been one to follow rules.
We've spent a lot of time together, haven't we?
We have.
Always keeping up with trends and fads.
How do you manage that, the expectations versus the reality of budgeting?
It's always insightful to get a gauge as to what their reference point is with budget.
Pre-COVID, I didn't know what Zoom was.
You know, everything is done to a higher level.
That detail Jeremy and the band and the guys will go into, by definition, makes our life easier.
There's levels and levels, and that comes in the detail. Joining me on this episode of The Secret World of Events is a very special international guest, Shawn Sawyer. Shawn is the president and creative director of Cacique International, who are based in the Bahamas of all places. Now, Shawn and I met a number of years ago on an event we were part of in Nassau, and whilst he was in London, I thought it'd be great to get him into the show. Welcome, Shawn.
Thank you, Gavin, for having me.
Now, Shawn, it's unusual, I guess, to have someone on the podcast who comes from the Bahamas. But just tell me a little bit about yourself. Who is Shawn Sawyer? And tell us a little bit about Cacique.
Right. So, again, Gavin, lovely to be here. I'm enjoying this wonderful weather here in February. It's a nice change from what I would be experiencing.
I was hoping you'd be bringing some sunshine with you.
I did. Dropped it a couple of days, but I need a bit of a change too. So the weather is part of that change. So you're going to have to bear with it. So Cacique. Okay, so if I were to start from the beginning, which would be 25 years ago, we'd be here for a very long time. So I'm just going to give you the quick rundown. So I graduated from college, had a lovely degree in business administration and accounting, and decided that's what I was going to do. A few months into it, bored to tears, was just completely miserable with it, and decided, you know what, I need to take a break. So I did. Took some time off, went and traveled around, and decided that whatever it was I was going to do when I got back into the world of careers and work and planning for the next chapter, it was going to be something that I was going to be completely in love with. So I sat down, made some notes, and talked to myself a little bit about it, and realized that hospitality was where I wanted to go. So I joined the Crystal Palace, which was Carnival's Crystal Palace way back then in the Bahamas, in the catering and conference services department, because that seemed the most exciting one in a hotel. No disrespect or disregard to front desk and the casino and entertainment and food and beverage, but catering and conference services is where my heart sort of skipped a beat when I was thinking about it. So I joined up. And 5.5 years later, I left. I felt that it was time for me to jump into the next chapter, which was starting the very first destination management company.
So Cacique, where did the name come from?
So the Cacique was the chief of the Lucayan Indian tribe. So the Lucayan and the Carib Indians were part of the first settlers into the Bahamas. And basically the Cacique was the chief of the tribe. So I liked the name because it was sort of had a lot of historical value, good old Bahamian heritage, but it was strong. It was the chief, it was the leader, with the pioneer. So I felt that it was a good fit.
Beautiful.
And it fell into place.
Tell me, what is life like as an event and a destination planner in the Bahamas? Because I'm very jealous.
Yeah.
I've been there once with you,
Yep.
which is where we met, but we'll talk about that a bit later.
Yep.
What's life like?
A lot of people think that the Bahamas just breeds days of rum punches, pina coladas, and suntans. And there is that side of it, because obviously that's what we're very well known for. But behind the drapes in the Bahamas, there's a lot of industry and a lot of work that goes on, simply because in a destination like that, it attracts a lot of business in the conference, events, weddings, parties world, simply because everybody wants to come there and celebrate and carry their dreams to fruition on the beach and feel the sand in their toes.
I was going to say, you've got the beautiful beaches, the beautiful sea, you've got the beautiful sunshine.
We do. We have all of those attributes, but in order to make all of that work scientifically, and for the clients to walk away with those magical memories, we go to work every day.
So give me an example of sort of some of the types of work you take on, because you're not necessarily just about sort of destination weddings. You're very much more than that, aren't you? There's lots of verticals into your business.
Correct. Yeah, there's a lot of lanes and veins that lead in and out of the world of Cacique. Obviously, from the destination management perspective, we deal with a lot of conferences, executive meetings, sales conferences, board of director meetings. So we have that very, very big corporate side of our business, which involves a lot of events, product launches, etc. So we do have a lot of that, but we also have the local market, as we call it there, which they celebrate too. So there's a lot of weddings, there's a lot of events, there's a lot of launches, there's a lot of gallery exhibitions. So there's a lot of events that take place there outside of the world of just pina coladas and rum punches all the time, which keeps us extremely busy.
So to give me an example, let's say of a corporate offsite that maybe is taking place in Nassau, and a large, multinational may say, Shawn, this is what we're doing. We're bringing 200 people to the Bahamas. What sort of things can you offer them?
Right. So what we try and do is we try to dive into the DNA of why it is that they're coming in the first place. Because if it's just, we just want to take a break and it's close and, it's just a quick 2-day, 3-day thing, then we're obviously going to try to pull out of that as much as we can. But there are also other types of clients that will center their entire conference around a sort of Bahamian styled destination. So we tend to ask lots and lots and lots of questions: the who, the what, the where, the why, the how, understanding a bit of their history as what they've done in the past. And then we take all of that, that gray matter, and then we throw it into the cauldron and we start just stirring that up to add as much Bahamian touches into it as possible, so that when they leave, they're not just leaving, okay, well, let's just tick the box for the, for this year's conference or this year's meeting. They're actually going to walk away with great memories, but also the company's going to leave with their team empowered and infused to raise the bar for next year. Simply because of the experience that they've had whilst there. And that comes from us as planners asking questions and really diving into the DNA of what it is they're here for.
And you're quite a big team. I mean, I always remember you being quite a big team in terms of your coverage and your staff. What are your sort of staffing numbers? Right
now we're 38 full-time, which is approximately 22 to 23% higher than we were pre-COVID.
Which is another staggering thing. So we spoke about this off camera just before, but
Yep.
The differences between what I'm seeing certainly London-wide and Europe is our lead times have shrunk. Our diary used to be filled up a couple of years in advance with bookings, and now very much people are far more short-term. And tell everybody how it is for you in the Bahamas now.
Well, it's a very, very, very small amount of that, but the bigger picture is we're booking out longer in advance simply because of the destination. So what we've found is that because the Bahamas is still international, we are still enormously close to places like the United States, Latin America, and even South America. I think people are still a little bit sort of waiting for the paint to dry as far as going really, really long haul and long distance. So we've become, I should say, an even more attractive international destination. People sometimes have this thing that the Bahamas isn't that part of the United States or what? No, we're not. We are our own country.
You very much have your own identity.
Our own identity.
Culture.
As a matter of fact, we're still a part of the British Commonwealth.
Yes.
So we're international enough, which is very attractive for a lot of corporate America and even the Canadian market. So we are getting a lot of people that are wanting that destination for those reasons, which means that they're being forced to look far ahead.
Sure.
To book, to get the dates.
To make sure they get the dates and make sure they get the tours and...
Well, the dates, but also venue space,
yeah.
And making sure that their venues can accommodate what it is that they want. If you're coming there for a 3-night, 4-day event, you need a lot of venues and a lot of spaces that need to be booked. So if you can appreciate, 8, 10, 12 different companies vying for that space, it suddenly becomes slightly extinct.
What's competition like for you in terms of the marketplace in the Bahamas?
So I have to explain this in a couple of different ways here. So from a destination management company perspective, there are a couple of other companies that do what we call DMC work. But we tend to push the envelope a little bit farther. We have a full sales force that goes through to the planning team, to the operations team, to the execution team. So we've got those different segments just like a hotel does. And a lot of the competition that we have in that regard doesn't really have those departments. They're not as big as we are. We've been doing this for 25 years, so we've kind of established ourselves as sort of the stalwarts that have been around.
Well, as the Cacique.
As the Cacique, there you go.
Yeah.
But the other thing is what's very important nowadays, and I'm sure a lot of your previous planners and partners that you've spoken to about this, clients want financially sound companies.
Absolutely.
That are not just popping up and popping out and changing names, changing ownerships. That just on top of everything. And you know, the purple elephant in the room here is obviously, you know, what we've just been through for the last couple of years.
Sure, with COVID.
With COVID has sort of jeopardized that a little bit more. But as you know, if clients have seen you around for a long time, you've been through financial meltdowns, 9/11, COVID. In the Bahamas, as you remember, a few years ago, we had Dorian.
That's right.
That sort of, you know, damaged a vast portion of it, but you know, we're still around. That also helps.
Yeah.
From the events and the weddings perspective, we're very different. We are not a package style company that you're going to call up and say, hey, I'd like to look at, you know, what packages you offer, or can I go through your rental catalog? Whilst we own everything that we work with and design with, we're very bespoke. We do not take more than one event or wedding a weekend. We try not to do more than 2 a month. So we really feel that in doing so, we're able to give our clients the return on their investment, which is isolating what it is that they want.
Absolute attention.
And making them feel like they're the only person in the world that we're working on or working with.
And I'm sure there's plenty of companies in the Bahamas that do the package weddings.
Yes.
You'd be at the hotel by the pool and another bride and another bride, another bride.
Correct.
Yeah,
there
sure.
is. And you know what? There's nothing wrong with that. That's just not a part of our business model. We want to create memories, and we want to create platforms for our clients to just imagine.
Now, I titled today's show The Art of Colour. And that's based upon my one experience, which was obviously incredible, of working with you a number of years ago. Just to set the scene for those listening to the podcast, Shawn and I met when we were taken to the Bahamas for a 50th birthday. Now, I would love to show some content and to show you what an amazing party it was. But for lots of very valid legal reasons, we signed an NDA and the footage remains private. But what we can do is we can talk about the party in terms of it being it was a 3-day event, wasn't it? Let's just run through it. Going back to the colour thing.
Yeah.
I called it the Art of Colour because I was blown away how you take the colours of the island, and everything at that party that weekend for the 50th was centred around the culture of the Bahamas, the colour of the Bahamas. You really instilled that experience onto the guests.
Which sort of highlights what I was saying a few minutes earlier with you, Gavin, that we take it very seriously when it comes to why somebody's doing what they're doing in the Bahamas. Let's face it, destinations around the world are completely accessible. There's nowhere that's too difficult for any event or party or conference to take place. So when they do select the Bahamas and they do decide to come down there and spend no matter what limit of funds, we want them to leave feeling like, you know what, that was the best experience, party, event ever. This one was no exception. Obviously, our client...
It was exceptional.
It was exceptional. Obviously, we had a great client to work with,
Sure.
He and his wife, who do spend time in the Bahamas. So they understood the language of color and creating that experience each and every step of the way with this event, as opposed to just, you know, everybody putting on a tuxedo and just going into a hotel ballroom. No disrespect to tuxedos and hotel ballrooms.
There's a place for everything.
Absolutely. But they did... they understood 50% of the lingo before we even got started, which was great.
What I'm going to do is I'm going to walk through in a verbal, visually way of the weekend because
Let's do it.
The guests flew in from all over the world.
They did.
And then they had a sort of a Friday night sort of get together, didn't they? It was a Friday night. And it was at a beautiful venue. Remind me of the venue?
The Island House.
The Island House, which sounds as beautiful as it was. Yeah. And they had an Asian dinner. That was right, wasn't it?
They did.
And then the guests come out onto the terrace, and standing in front of them is none other than George Benson.
Indeed.
That was a bit of an experience.
That was an experience, for
Was
sure.
that a client choice? Was that something you put forward to them?
So the client actually liked the venue for this particular party for two reasons. One, the client obviously took the whole place over.
Yep.
A lot of his guests stayed there, so he had sort of full ownership of the venue. But the restaurant there, where their main dining room facility, which is very much a Thai style venue, they loved. So it was about taking that venue and sort of reinventing it so that it didn't feel like the normal place that he and his family and friends would go to all the time, but still keeping the good bones of it, but elevating it. So we did just that. And the client then said, as you know, I've got some amazing entertainment that I would like. So what better place to do this with the massive swimming pool floating behind it, slightly elevated, which was kind of interesting. So after dinner, everybody went downstairs, and there was
George Benson.
But before that, if you remember correctly, we were able to convince his middle son to play.
That's right.
With George Benson.
Yeah.
Because he was taking piano lessons at the time.
Yeah.
So everybody walked down to the son playing with George Benson on stage, which was kind of very
And
cool.
this is one of the things that gets me about the job that I do, we do. You get to see some extraordinary things. I mean, it's an absolute privilege. When I thought about that on the plane flying out, night one, we're going to be filming George Benson, who I love. Mm-hmm. And the whole band, it was a ginormous band. It was absolutely awesome to watch and to step back and see it all take place. And doesn't negate the fact that we're all working and it was extremely, long days.
Right.
I'd probably say actually as a weekend, it was probably one of the most grueling events in terms of timings, because everything needed to be filmed. For us, sunrises. We're up first and we had jet lag. So sunrises, get the beauty of the island before you move on to the setup of the events and everything else that's going on. So it was
I have to say, I don't know how you and your team did it. Obviously, we've seen the output of everything.
I'm going to agree and say I have no idea. We still talk about it. We still talk about it.
But what you guys captured, what your eyes saw and was able to put out was just simply incredible. Not just in general, Gavin, but the fact that you had flown 8.5 hours to get there, and you literally jumped right into the Bahamas time frame.
Got straight on it.
24 hours a day, 4 or 5 days worth of just filming. So congratulations and kudos to you guys.
Thank you.
It was incredible working with you.
Super great working with you.
Yeah.
Super hard work.
Right.
But what we see as a result, and in a funny kind of way, the film absolutely remains private, and as do many of our films. A lot of our clients demand privacy, which we totally respect. It just feels a shame that it never gets showcased, but it's a wonderful memory. And when we sit down as a team, and sometimes we talk about some of the jobs, there are certain things we're sort of reminded about. The next day was a giant pool party.
Correct. Who doesn't come to the Bahamas and have a pool party?
With lots of inflatables.
With lots of inflatables, quote unquote.
Lots of alcohol.
An exceedingly large amount of alcohol in lovely cabanas privately.
But not everybody has a stage overhanging the pool again.
Not everybody has a stage hanging over the pool.
And on the
again.
Stage was?
The good old Gypsy Kings.
The Gypsy Kings, who wowed the crowd whilst they were in the pool.
Absolutely.
For an amazing set.
So, obviously, as you remember, Friday, their sort of welcome to the islands, welcome to the Bahamas, was the bliss of George Benson and his team, and the gorgeous weather that everybody experienced that night. But the next day, to then turn around and put on swimsuits and then be shuttled off to yet another private venue.
Yes.
Walk into the venue with the stage floating over the swimming pool with the Gypsy Kings playing. For us, at the time of planning and talking logistics and dissecting every step of the way, you kind of forget the magnitude of what the outcome is going to be. And in the world of events, you do that.
Yeah.
You're living in the moment, maybe 2 or 3 steps ahead to make sure that where you're going is where you should be going. But when you sit back and you think about walking into that venue, seeing them performing at the edge of the swimming pool, floating over it, it's sort of, you take a deep breath and you say, wow, that's pretty cool. But then in that breathing second, you're on to the next.
You're on to the next thing. Yeah. Which the next thing was the main event.
Yes.
Well, in fact, I said it was the main event. The whole thing was a main event, but
correct.
It was the big party night.
Right.
The big party night.
It was. So whilst obviously, as
that was at Old Fort Bay, wasn't it?
That was at the lawn at Old Fort Bay.
Yeah.
Yes, in a marquee, which is a private club. The client wanted for that night to be just something completely. I'm going to use the word elegant, but something that was not as elegant as one may think, as I mentioned earlier with black tie, but still
everybody was there. It was a white party.
It was a white party, and obviously everybody got dressed up. The lawn itself, as you can appreciate, was very large, and the client did not want anybody's shoes or ladies' heels in the grass or whatnot, but he still wanted to be with the view of one of the most beautiful beaches in the Bahamas there in Old Fort Bay. So we had the arduous task, as you remember, of building decks throughout the entire lawn area in white. Obviously, everything was white that night with a little bit of hint of gray here and there. Pin that. So the first night, tie colors, beautiful.
Yeah,
welcome to the islands. It was beautiful. It was
blues.
Bright and blues and oranges and just beautiful welcome to the island style look and feel. Next day at the private pool venue was red and white, simply because those were the color palettes of that area.
Yeah.
So obviously it was very vibrant and very strong and fun and loud. But Saturday night, we softened the tone a little bit. The client wanted everybody to have a great time, but wanted, beautiful florals, white floor, nobody, dirt on their shoes, so to speak. And we did. We obviously enclosed a beautiful marquee, turned on the AC.
And then wheeled out Lionel Richie.
And then the big name came out, which was incredible.
So if I didn't pinch myself on Friday night or Saturday afternoon, on Saturday night, I'm watching Lionel Richie in front of a couple of hundred people, giving an unbelievable performance.
Obviously the client himself was so excited about the whole event, meaning the whole weekend. He really and truly tried his best to keep it a secret on Saturday night. Didn't really mind, Friday night or Saturday even, but definitely Saturday night. He wanted to try to keep that as much of a secret as possible. And I still think to this day there were a few people that I don't know if they really knew that Lionel Richie was performing.
I don't think they did, because everybody was speculating whether it was going to be. I think everybody knew there was going to be something, purely because of what had gone on the previous nights. Correct. And perhaps from the character that he is. And there was a lot of speculation as to who potentially it was going to be. But
there was.
I think it was, And also that night, I remember we also made a film, didn't we, with his wife, to surprise him in Los Angeles with a carpool karaoke with James Corden.
Correct.
Which we surprised him with, which was fabulous. And then there was a moment we shared, Shawn. You won't remember it, but I will never forget it. It was about 4 o'clock in the morning, Shawn.
Okay.
The party had finished. We'd been up for 22 hours.
Right.
Because we started filming at 6 o'clock in the morning for time lapses. And the following day, which was now the day of, there was a private island the guests were going to for a lunch. And I saw you at 4 o'clock in the morning, and I said to you, Shawn, So we're all set. We're going to be going to the private island. What time's our flight? I think you said it was 9 in the morning. And you said, oh, did I say 9? Sorry, actually I meant 6:30.
Yes.
And we had to literally pack our bags up, not go back to the hotel, turn all our equipment around, and we went to this, took a little private seaplane or whatever it was, and flew to, is it Kamalake?
Kamalame.
There you go. No, I couldn't say it right. To this incredible, private island?
Yeah. So Kamalame is a private portion of Andros, and Andros is the largest island in the Bahamas, in the Bahamian chain, I should say. So this is a very private section of the island, and the client wanted to just let loose. This was the finale, very relaxed, everybody going to the beach, but in true style, form, and fashion of the weekend. It just had to be done, to the very best. So we built, as you can remember, 2 very, very, very large cabana style seating, covered, thatched areas for everybody
on
to
the
sit
beach.
on the beach.
It was incredible.
So that everybody had shade. We built an actual sand stage for the band, which was reggae.
Yep.
We wanted a very
informal beach barbecue style, everybody in the sea. Yeah, it was
100% just total Bahamian. This is the end of the weekend. This is the beginning of my 51st year. So let's go out in very casual style. So again, colors that day and the look and feel were just all very tropical, very island style look and feel. And if you remember correctly, there was in one of the many private plane journeys back and forth from Nassau, which is the main island and not too far, was the birthday cake.
That's right.
The birthday cake, which was 4 tiers high, was flown privately to the island, and right there on the beach. As you do. It was, I'm going to say rolled, but obviously you don't roll in the sand, but it was rolled out into the middle of the beach, where the entire group sang happy birthday.
Yeah, I can actually visually remember it.
Drinking cold champagne.
Absolutely, yeah. It's a weekend I will never forget. And here we are some 6 or 7 years later, I think it is. 5 years later.
A little over 5 years.
5 years later, yeah. And I find you in London.
Exactly.
And reach out and say, you've got to come and join us on the podcast.
Absolutely.
Is there one rule you live by in your business?
No. The type of world that we live in, we work in, is so multifaceted and so multiplexed that different lanes require different specifics. So it's very difficult to pinpoint one for all. The tagline for the company is called Just Imagine. So what we try to do each and every time we meet with a client to discuss whatever project it is we always try to create a platform or a boundless arena for them to literally just imagine. Like, to have the comfort and the freedom to say, I'd like to try this, or I'd like to do that, or is this possible, or can I fly Lionel Richie down to perform for an hour and a half for a birthday, or we live in a world that's a structured thing. We get up, we go to work, school, kids, so on and so forth. When you're celebrating and when you're trying to enjoy milestones, friends, family, and whatnot, our sort of motto that we like to live by is literally creating that boundless arena for you to just imagine. Right now, we're working on with a client for a birthday party for her 90-year-old father.
Oh, wow.
Who is very mobile. It just so happens that he's 90 years old. And, gosh, you got to have a lot of respect for people when they make it to 90. But she lives in Old Fort Bay, in the Bahamas, and just beautiful home. But next door to her home, which is a part of the compound, as I call it, is this beautiful garden on the water, just stunning. And when the client took me there to look at it, to say, what's possible and what's feasible, I looked at it and I said, well, we can do this. We can put a marquee there. We can put the bar on the dock and, great little tucked away vignettes for your guests and whatnot. And she goes, I guess I should have thought about this before. And so I said, what do you mean? She says, I've never entertained in my backyard before. I've never done this before. So I thought, well, not only is this going to be the first time, drop the boundaries. Just think, out loud, and all those things that you may have experienced, that you may have wanted to do, or your dad may experienced and loved throughout his lifetime. Let's do that. Let's do it all this one particular day to celebrate his birthday. So off to the races we go.
Fantastic. And so that's to come.
That's to come.
And how many events generally do you think you're sort of running? I know you've got lots of different things going on, but as a business, how many sort of events are you sort of handling a year, would you say?
I'm going to say it's in the 3 digits.
Oh, wow. I mean, that's a lot.
Low 3 digits. Yeah. Obviously for let's say a 4-day conference, that could be 3 events a day.
Yeah.
So, when you add all of those up along with all of the sort of the soirees and the parties and the exhibitions and the weddings and whatnot, it adds up. But what we try not to do, Gavin, is we really, really, really do not want to become a churn and burn. Because
you're not a factory. You're not a factory. No, I know.
And we don't want to be. We could be very easily, but I don't. In my own personal life, I try to push the envelope and exhaust every possible avenue. And when doing those sorts of things in life, you need time to do it properly. Yep. You can, slap things together very quickly and just get this, just get that, and it works. But I think when it's truly memorable and something touches your gut, that 3-second wow factor when you arrive to an event is really what we strive for every day. And if that doesn't happen, then we've not done our job.
I love that. When you're working with clients, it's a question I'm asking lots of people on the podcast, managing expectations as well, perhaps with budgets, alongside a budget. Some people assume that just a large budget just buys you a fantastic party. Well, how do you sort of express that with clients?
So obviously different types of clients have different types of expectations. We just did a wedding last year for 8 people, bride, groom, and 6 people. That's all they wanted. And in all honesty, I said to the client, just out of curiosity, why did you contact us? I mean, this is kind of something that, you can do with one hand tied behind your back type thing, respectfully.
Yeah.
And he and his wife to be at the time just said, we just want it done right. So for us,
what a compliment.
A huge compliment for sure. And it just goes to the testament of one at a time. So we did. That took us off the market that particular weekend, and we functioned our entire world around that experience. So, when discussing budget with that client, it's a very different discussion, when you're talking to another client.
Well, when you're working with big multinationals, I mean, imagine they come with a budget because they kind of know where they're or not. I mean, how does that work with you?
So in the corporate world, for the most part, they do. But when you get into the social market, which is obviously all of your celebrations and your weddings and whatnot, they think they have a budget, but in a lot of cases they don't. What they do have, and again, is no disrespect to Pinterest, but they have a lot of pictures of things.
It's so funny how Pinterest is featured on our podcast as the worst thing in the world for a planet is somebody else's Pinterest board.
Correct. And what we do is we, in the process, one of the things that we do with a client is we say, okay, let us dive into the visual world. Mind you, we ask 15 million questions, and sometimes they get annoyed because we're asking too many things about them. Not about their finances, but just who they are and the makeup and the chemistry of who they are as people. But just to try and understand what it is that they would really like to see. Because in some cases, what they say verbally is not what's being depicted on Pinterest at all. So we tend to kind of eliminate a lot of those Pinterest things when we're working with clients. But, you know, they bring these Pinterest boards to the table, and then they give you a budget that's just from one end of the spectrum to the other. And you sort of have that reality discussion with them. I'm like, okay, well, you do realize that this, you know, 10-foot by 8-foot arch floating over a swimming pool on a mirrored walkway with flowers the whole way and
could
steps
cost you X.
is going to cost X, which is going to consume your budget times 3. So let's revert back to what's important to you two as individuals. We'll use your pictures as some sort of style segue, but then we're going to eliminate those pictures that you've had in your mind and you've spent hours, if not days and weeks, plucking off Pinterest. And we're going to start to create your own vibe deck. And from there, we create the experience relative what their budget can accommodate. Because unfortunately, you know, Pinterest
It's a bit like reverse engineering.
Correct. Pinterest doesn't show pictures and have underneath what the client spent or how much this actually costs. Let's not forget that, you know, living in the Bahamas, you know, being, you know, where most things are shipped into the country, we don't have flower farms or hydrangea farms or orchid farms there. So, you know, when it comes to flowers, everything is shipped in. So what may cost X in the United Kingdom or in the United States, it's going to be a little bit more there. So we have to sort of re-engineer their mindset of what that day or weekend needs to look and feel like. And we do have some very hardcore discussions. And there have been times where, I'm not going to say there have been arguments, but the clients just don't really quite understand the cost and the financial side of putting on, you know, these big sort of events. So we have to sort of 101 them a little bit. And sometimes they accept it, and sometimes they feel that we're just being not so nice, and we're just...
It's the harsh truth when it comes to money and
Correct.
budgets. Nobody wants to hear maybe the actual figures.
Correct. But I think that it's important for people to understand that not every event has to be expensive to be memorable.
Correct.
You can still make magic on a budget. You can still make magic on not having, you know, millions of dollars worth of flowers. It's not a do or die thing. It's about creating something that day that's a true reflection on you as a couple or you as an individual, that people will say, you know what, this is really, really, really an experience that we know came from Gavin's heart if you and your wife were doing something. And that for us is the most important thing.
Is there one type of event you prefer personally over others if you had to choose?
Oh boy. I don't know that there is a particular type of event. I just thoroughly love working with clients who want it done right. And they understand that in order to do it right, you need to go through steps. You need to be methodical about things. You need to have very transparent, open discussions about things. And once you get beyond that sort of what I call the foundation, building the walls, the roof, decorating and putting the doors and the windows on it is a dream come true. It's very easy because you know the boundaries. You know, it's when you don't know, when you can't have those financial discussions with clients, and clients are saying, this is all I'm about to spend or want to spend, help me make it work. It's a knee-jerk reaction if it's not, because you're like, okay, well, what about this? Well, yeah, I'll have to get back to you because I don't know if I can afford it, and you have to change design directions all the time. But it's when you help them understand those boundaries, and then from there, you just run with it.
Yeah. Let's talk about adversity in events. Let's talk about when things can go a little bit wrong. Are you, I'm going to imagine you would be, are you calm when things maybe hit the skids a bit?
In my younger years, no. When things would go wrong in my younger years, there was a lot of self-blame on myself, because in the event planning world, as you very well know, Gavin, clients pay you their hard-earned money, no matter whether they have a lot of it or not. They pay you their hard-earned money to make it happen. because they want you to make sure that it happens smoothly. They could do this themselves. They could make 15 phone calls a day and plan an event and do things.
Sure.
I mean, they'll probably be driven to drink, but they
Yep.
can do these things. So when they pay you to do this and something doesn't go right, for me in my younger years, I used to take it personally. Like, okay, what did I do wrong? Why? And I would not handle it so well. Because it was sort of like, okay, well, I didn't plan this properly. I didn't think about this. I didn't sort of sit down and blueprint the what ifs.
Yeah, what ifs, what could go wrong.
The what ifs.
But that does come with experience.
It does, and I learned that very early on, to the point to where the what ifs can sometimes take the excitement away from doing projects and events, because you're constantly thinking the what if, the what if, the what if. And you don't step back and say, well, I've done the what if thing.
Yep.
Now let's just all, we're all in our lanes. Let's just full throttle forward.
I think also the sign of a good planner, and from what's been discussed certainly on season 1 and the start of season 2, is with a good planner, a client will never know.
Correct.
We'll never know what went on.
Correct. And that's part of our discussions with our clients at the very beginning. We talk about those what if scenarios with them. And some clients are like, well, why are we having this discussion? Or this sounds a little bit, negative. And well, it's because when the engine starts for the weekend or the day, we don't need to be coming back to you for decisions, because you need to be out front, living your best life, enjoying the moment and enjoying the reason for all of this. So we want to take the time now to discuss the what ifs. If it rains, if something doesn't turn up, how would you like us to proceed? If somebody turns up that's not invited, how do you want, if somebody's performing and they're not supposed to have their camera out, so we tick all of those boxes. We make huge lists of those what ifs, and we document all of that. We have clearly defined discussions with our clients about that in advance, because once that engine starts, and
you're off and running.
We're off and running, and you're never going to know about what's going on behind the drapes.
You just actually, as you said something there, I was thinking to myself, oh yeah, of course, what if it rains? Here, we fully expect rain on every summer's day, and everyone wants to have their wedding, somewhere beautiful. But here, it's very likely it will rain. When I think of the Bahamas and the beaches and the beautiful blue sea, I think, of course you're going to go there and get married, and it's beautiful. But of course, what if it does happen to be that one day?
Well, it does rain in the Bahamas too.
Yeah.
The thing is for the most part, it's quite unexpected, as you know, because obviously in the tropics that thing happens.
Yeah.
So there are times of the year when certain ratios force us to have very hardcore discussions with our clients to say that we need to have one ready to go on a backup. How does that affect the budget? Well, yes, it does. So we always, I think back to a particular wedding many years ago, very early in my career, where the client, who I know very well, he and his wife, it was his eldest daughter's wedding. And the wedding was actually being held at his... So my client was a gentleman who his wife's parents had a beautiful home, and both parents had been deceased, and the home had sat, and it's completely surrounded by the ocean. So big, beautiful home, and it hadn't been lived in for a while. So the wife, whose parents owned the house, she brought in a decorating team and got it back to its former glory. But there was going to be 400 people at this house on the entire property, which connected to a beautiful beach, generator, another big beautiful band floating over the swimming pool. However, the way that the house was set up, the swimming pool needed to be covered in plexiglass.
Yeah.
Simply because that gave us more real estate for the event. So, we're having discussions with the father of the bride-to-be. And, I said, well, we need to talk about tenting. We have a lot of ground to cover. And he says, no, don't want any tents.
It's so obvious what's coming.
I said, well, we need to have tents.
Yeah.
And he said, no, because the weather's going to be fine. However, if, leading up to it, we see that there's going to be a need, then we can cross that bridge when we get to it. But at the moment, no. I said, well, unfortunately, you're going to have one for the band because all of their equipment needs to be covered just in case. And I'm going to need it to cover the food, the food areas that were scattered all over the property. So he said, okay, well, we'll do that, but no more. And we followed the weather, and the weather looked fine. The day of the wedding ceremony, which was at a church, beautiful, still sunny. But towards the ending of the ceremony, obviously the clouds started to roll in. It started to get a little bit windy as it does. You can feel that.
You can feel it, can't you?
You can feel it coming type thing. And then all of a sudden from the west, you could just see the gods were rumbling at this point. And sure enough, it poured, Gavin.
Bucketed
it was
down.
A deluge. The gentleman whose wife's parents owned the house, she had a couple of brothers. They had tried and tested the generator. Everything was working, yada, yada, yada. What goes out? The generator. So we've got no light, rain deluge down like no tomorrow. So we're sitting there just waiting, watching. People were still drinking and whatnot.
Just waiting for it to pass.
But all of a sudden, the groom now decided, you know what, enough of this. Takes off the tuxedo jacket, loosens the tie, and out in the rain they went. And
Fabulous.
And eventually the rain slowed down, and then eventually stopped. But I'm not going to say everybody, but a vast number of people just got in it, and they just enjoyed it for what it was. And still to this day, the bride and the groom say by far the best party that they've ever had.
There you go.
I needed probably 5 years worth of therapy afterwards. I sat down with the father that night as, people are still dancing and wet and whatnot. And I said, he just looked at me and he just said, well, it's a great party. So I said, better yet, now that you know what you know, would you do it any different?
Yeah.
He looked at me and he said, no.
No.
Take a look at the dance floor, which was obviously the plexiglass covering the entire swimming pool. Everybody was out there until like 4:30 in the morning, just having the best time ever. So, moral of the story, yes, you want to be prepared, but there are times when you turn lemons into lemonade, and it goes down as one of the best parties ever.
I'm going to write that down.
Go for
Take
it.
lemons into lemonade. I love that.
Go forward.
What if you could give our listeners 3 tips, perhaps, on planning a party? What to think of? Let's say, for example, let's take a wedding, because we spoke about weddings. What would you advise clients from the outset when they started to think about it?
First thing is obviously the whole honest thing. I think that people getting married nowadays need to be very honest with each other as to what it is that they really want. I think once you're able to openly, transparently sit down with each other and discuss those things, it's going to bring you a level of understanding together as you move forward with your planner or whomever you're working with, an equal ground that everybody's working from, so that everybody can understand transparent, honest, straight up perspective. This is what we want, and this is what we want for as far as our expectation, which then allows for the second part is for whomever you're working with, the comfort of being able to be honest with you, meaning the clients themselves. I would definitely, I definitely feel that once you're honest, the truth is always going to come out, and it's going to be able to be, digested and understood, and it's not going to be such a big deal. moving forward. I think listening. I think you've got to listen, not only to each other, but as a planner or an event designer, you got to have the world's greatest ears. You've got to really, really, really listen to what people are saying. Listen to each other, because there are times when you may think you want a white party, but your language is speaking to something that's very Gatsby related. Like, listen to that and go with the third part of this is always go with your gut. Always, when you're making decisions, you should feel those birds and those ostriches running around your stomach with excitement. Like, this is really, really, really and truly something that I'm going to be very excited to be a part of. So as long as you're honest with each other, you're communicating constantly along the way, the level of decision making and the level of understanding and respect, both between planner and client with planner, it becomes a very joyous environment, and that's when it becomes fun.
Love that. 25 years is a fabulous anniversary. Oh, yes. What does the next 25 years hold for Cacique?
Oh, hopefully somewhere along the way, some form of retirement, knock on wood. The next 25 years, honestly, Gavin, I didn't really ever think about the first 25 years. For us at Cacique, and I say us as a team, as a family, we're very much a one client, one project kind of style of thinking. We try not to look too far. Obviously, you have to plan financially, and you have to plan for the obvious moving forward in the world of the plan based on the business side of things. But, we just try to do it one event at a time. And then all of a sudden one turns into 2 to 10 to 20 to 30. And your watch or your phone on your clock on your phone just becomes another date. Because that's what you're working towards and you're working forward to. So to have realized, and to be honest with you, I didn't really realize this until I think it was the ending of the 24th year when I was discussing some event dates with somebody about an event the first event we ever did back in 1997. And all of a sudden I said, oh, wait a minute. 1997, and I just did the calculation. I said, holy crap, this is 24 years. Next year, we're going to be 25.
So you didn't even know it was creeping up on you?
I didn't even know it was creeping up on me. That's like a little bit less than half my age. So literally half of my life I've been doing this and didn't really know, simply because one of the things that I did, that a really good friend of mine, she said to me when I was thinking about what it was that I wanted to do for the rest of my life, and she said, when you sit down and you try to figure this out, Shawn, she said, get a legal pad out and write down all the things that you would like to do and accomplish in your life. And then put a little star by those things you think you could do for the rest of your life and not be paid. And it was free.
It was free.
And I said, oh boy, that's going to be a little bit tough because we all need money. We all want nice cars and nice watches and whatnot. So for me, it was about not so much the job or work. It was about the fulfillment of life, so that you're not worried about, how many years is it, or how long have I been doing this, or, oh my gosh, the alarm clock's going off tomorrow morning, in a derogatory way. Yeah, the alarm clock goes off in my world, but it goes off like, okay, what are we going to be faced with today? What new phone call? What new client? What new email?
It seems to me that 25 years on, you still have the passion.
100%.
In abundance.
The day that it became, and I always said this to people around me, the day that my career became work was the day that I would shut the business down. It's not fun at that point. It has to be fun. Yes, there are stressful moments. There's the business side of things, and you've got to make some pretty hard, tough calls at times, and you have to go through financial meltdowns like the world did globally, and hurricanes and global pandemics. Yeah, you obviously have to be, an adult about those things. But to just live in Neverland every day and not have to worry about, the reality of life, so to speak, is 25 years for us.
Well, here's my ambition.
Go for it.
I want to work with you again.
I do too. We almost did.
We almost did. We almost did twice on the same job. Yeah,
Correct.
for a cruise. But I want you to fulfill my dream of giving me and my team another experience to film for one of your clients out in the Bahamas, because it was exceptional.
It was exceptional.
Doesn't come along a lot.
No, but I'm sure you've got a couple of daughters that would love to get married.
Well, I do.
I'm sure they would love.
Shawn, I'm going to point them to the 8-person conversation wedding you had and say,
Fantastic.
8 people, one and done.
Fantastic.
Perfect.
Fantastic. I would relish that opportunity.
Fantastic. Shawn, you've been a fabulous guest to have on today. Thank you so much for popping down to see us.
Absolutely, Gavin. This is a real treat. Thank you I'm humbled, actually, and that we've had this opportunity not only to reconnect, but to discuss the art of color and our previous world a couple of years ago. So
Absolutely.
No, this has been brilliant.
Great
we
to
need
have
to
you.
do this again, but you need to come down barefoot and let's do it on the beach.
I'm booking my flights. If you've enjoyed today's episode of The Secret World of Events, don't forget to give us a like and subscribe, and also do pop us a comment. It's going to help shape future shows. Until next time, we'll see you soon. Great to have you here.
I had decided I wanted to get into events.
Don't rush into anything.
Left university and pretty much went straight into it.
It's just got to happen. So do what you need to make it happen.
I've never been one to follow rules.
We've spent a lot of time together, haven't we?
We have.
Always keeping up with trends and fads.
How do you manage that, the expectations versus the reality of budgeting?
It's always insightful to get a gauge as to what their reference point is with budget.
Pre-COVID, I didn't know what Zoom was.
Everything is done to a higher level.
That detail Jeremy and the band and the guys will go into, by definition, makes our life easier.
There's levels and levels, and that comes in the detail.